There's a blank screen. Reload.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Buddhist Insights, Empty Cloud, our virtual vihara right now.
Yes, the virtual Sangha.
Yeah, virtual Sangha. So happy to have you all here. Is there anything that we do? Any official monks chanting or anything?
We do not do any official chanting, but if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so for those of you that didn't catch the meditation Dhamma talk earlier in the week, Sanata Vihari Bhikkhu from Sarath Chandra Buddhist Center in LA. I was ordained in the Sri Lankan tradition. Mexican-American monk, Air Force veteran, and yeah, a bit goofy at times too, so you're in for some of that. Yeah, so I think we already have some questions for monks chat, right?
Yes, we do. We'll stream out. And for those who don't know me, I'm Bhante Metiko. And we'll go ahead and start in. So again, just so everybody knows, this evening, we're very fortunate to have you here, Venerable. You're very thankful to hear your Dhamma and your teachings. And this is an opportunity for people to send in their questions about Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. All the questions that you may have wanted to ask. This is your opportunity to have someone ask some questions, and we'll do our best to answer. And we'll go ahead and get started. I think there was already a question. I do the same thing that I had.
I go analog.
Let's
see if it's easier for me. Let's go all the way to the top.
Jojo. Oh,
is that a question?
I don't know. Let's see. Well, show it.
Okay.
It says sorry, one more thing, but I don't know what the other thing was. It may have been typed in before we were kind of up, and we may have missed it.
Oh, maybe it's asking about like the precepts, right?
Yeah, it sounds like this question is really asking about the precept of right speech.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to answer it? Or do you want me to answer it?
Well, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I would say this, if we understand this question correctly, Jutta, and thank you, it's a good question in terms of, and it's something in my lay life working that I think sometimes people face. What happens when, and this is our precepts in general, our sila is very important. What happens when it bumps against, let's say, our company, our boss wants us to do something that maybe might not be the truth. And I think you should always reflect on and go back to your precepts and how do you want to keep those. And it's difficult because we can face repercussions sometimes from our jobs. But I always think our sila and our morality is important. And sometimes we shouldn't compromise that. I've been in a very similar situation, and yeah, it's tough, but I think you can never go wrong by following the precepts and following sila. It'll always steer you in the right direction, even in it's difficult. And we may face those things that are difficult. The Buddha talks about in one sutta. Those are things that are difficult to do, but have benefit. And this might be one of those cases. Especially, it sounds like you're entering data that's not accurate. Like that could I mean, it could be a big issue, and just even beyond the precepts, what happens if it could come back and hurt you professionally? You know, someone's looking at what you produce, and they're like, "Man, wait a second, why aren't these numbers adding up? You really messed this up." So it might, even in that regard, it might come back and cause you some issues.
The first thing that came to mind was the sutta in the Digha Nikaya about a great sacrifice that happened in the past with the Bodhisattva. And at that time, the Bodhisattva was the chaplain to the king. And the king wants to do a great puja, a great offering. And basically in those days, they sacrificed animals. And they would kill a lot of animals. And the Buddha said, well, the Bodhisattva at that time said, if you want to have a successful one, do one in which there's no violence, right? And to offer like honey and a bunch of other sweet stuff is going to be just like a dessert party, basically. The Bodhisattva said. But there, it's interesting because in this sutta, it says that the king gets like double the bad karma, or the person who orders another person to take life, to do something unwholesome, gets double. One, ordering the person to do it, and second, the suffering that it causes the person who's doing it, right? So,
like
the whoever's telling you to do this, I mean, they get like a double whammy, because if they're telling you to do it, that's the bad karma for like telling you to do something that's not true, to tell a lie. But also this suffering that is causing you right now, where you feel very conflicted, they also get that bad karma from making you suffer from doing it.
Yes.
So they get two unwholesome palas, results of the bad karma. So that's another thing. And there's where I think sometimes there isn't enough talk about kind of like these kind of organizational applications of sila and kamma, where we don't think about these different kind of levels. It's always, kamma is very like just about me, right?
Mm.
Where sometimes there is this kind of multi-layered, multi-dimensions to the actions that are happening. I remember I was talking to a monk about like that some soldiers in Bangladesh were asking him, like, oh, is it okay for us to be soldiers and, do what we have to do, and if we have to kill? And then at that time, what they told that man is that, well, the president's telling you to do it. You had no intention, so you're free from it. And I was like, well, no, you're not free from it. Right. I mean, both the person who's ordering you to kill and the one doing the killing are going to experience the bad karma. But the thing is that the person who's ordering to kill gets two bad karmas, one for telling you to do it, and another one for the agony and pain that is causing you for you to do that pain because you don't want to do it. So I really like that you asked this question, because it gave me the opportunity to talk about how we can apply Buddhism to organizations and to our society. And sometimes when we think about karma, we just think about samavacha and samakamanta, but we forget about sama ajiva, which is the right livelihood, or just way of life. So also we have to think about the short-term benefits and long-term benefits, right? And the other life benefits. So maybe sometimes we get very stuck in this kind of like quarterly kind of report benefits, and we think, well, yeah, if I do this, I keep my job right now, but who knows what might happen in the future? This might come back to bite you in the future. Yeah. Someone will find out about what you're doing. You might lose your job, or who knows, you might get arrested. Who knows? Yeah. We don't know how serious it is, right? You might get sued. Right. And then in the next life, you might have to experience the results of your actions in this life if changing the data hurts other beings. Right. So, we kind of have to think about the long-term benefit of things, and it may not be worth it just to keep this job if you're going to have to experience some really bad karma later in the future for it. So I know it's not an easy thing to consider, but, that's one thing that the Buddha throughout the suttas always tells us, is to consider the long term. Yes. Always the long term, not just right now. Although we say focus on the moment all the time, but that's not what we mean. That's taking it the wrong way, right? We mean be aware of what's happening at all times. We don't mean forsake the future at all costs. So yeah, it's kind of difficult situation that you're in, but just see what works best for you. And, what do we say? Like, cost to benefit ratio. Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you for those wonderful words. And yeah, the only thing I would add is this is very wonderful, even though it may feel like a lot of conflict or unsettling right now. The fact that you even feel this goes to your morality and your awareness of the precepts. There's plenty of people that would just, oh, no problem, and they would just do it. So I think you should commend yourself for even having that awareness. Like, this isn't right, or this feels uncomfortable.
The hidiotopa.
Yes.
Reluctance and remorse, or
yes.
I like those two words better than the ones they usually translate it as. What? Shame and something else, right? Guilt or something?
I think it's shame and guilt, or I forgot.
Yeah. But hidiotopa is a skillful,
it is very
skillful thing to have. So when you do find in these situations, they'll protect you from, doing it in the future and going further with it.
What was your translation again? I'm sorry.
Reluctance and remorse.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's better. I'll try this. Thank you. Great question. Hello, Sam. Hello, Rick from Indiana. Did I go too far?
Yeah, I can get it. I'm on this side. Let's see. All right. Yeah, thank you, Sam. Rick from Indiana. Oh, maybe you can go visit Bhante Devananda. He's in Indiana also. He's very nice. Who else? Rick Thorne. Best wish, Venerables. Can someone who lives a third shift life practice the 8 precepts? Third shift life.
And then it continues.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we got to share it, don't we?
We can.
Show, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Can someone who lives a third life shift practice the 8 precepts? And for lay practitioners, is there an allowance to eat at different times due to their... So there's no time restrictions for lay people. I mean, you can eat all day, every day, if that's what your body needs. Everyone has a different body. Everyone has different dietary restrictions, and some places might be closed and open, and you might have just little pieces throughout the day instead of having big meals. So, just see what works for your body. That's what I would say. But as far as the precepts come, or if you're trying to practice the 8 precepts, then that would be very difficult, very difficult. But I mean, if we keep the spirit, you would only have to have 1 meal a day, right? And I mean, that's what traditionally all the monastics and 8 precepts and 10 precepts would practice, just 1 meal a day. And the Buddha would say, be like me, monks. I only take 1 meal a day. I'm light in body and energetic and joyful. So it is possible. But, if you do live that kind of lifestyle, maybe you want to reconsider how often you take the 8 precepts, or if that's something that you should do for long term, because, yeah, it might not be good for your physical health or even mental health.
Yeah, I think anyone, that's important, your physical health and your mental health. And what's important about it is the spirit of it. If you're working different hours or your health doesn't allow you, that precept's in there. So, yeah, we're not just like, oh, I want a snack, I'm going to go to the refrigerator. We're not feeling this greed for food per se. So understanding that it's not just, oh, here's a rule. Understand, and I think with all the precepts, understand how it's designed to bring us closer to our own freedom and liberation in the mind. And so, yeah, that's why they're there. They really are designed to free the mind.
Yeah, it's a form of practicing sambara, indriya sambara, guarding the senses. Right. So if you think about it that way, then you don't have to take the 8 precepts. Just practice restraint and contentment at whatever time of days that you can eat, and like Bhante was saying, watching yourself when craving arises and desire arises, and that you kind of just work with that and try to manage it. So maybe it's not necessary to take the 8 precepts, but you can kind of follow your own kind of like 1 meal a day or 2 meal a day according to your schedule. And they'll still give you plenty of time throughout the day to work with craving and desire.
You can always find craving and desire. It'll be there. Thank you, Rick. I hope you're well.
Jayanta, hello, good evening. Karuna, hello. Bhumika, hello. Wasabi-chan, hello. Sergio, hello. Hello to Jason and Richard. And I think Richard does have a question here. Where'd he go? Oh, I think this is a... Go ahead.
Could you please both share one or more Dhamma stories from the Pali canon or monastic life that have had a profound impact on your practice along the path?
Go ahead. No pressure.
No. I was hoping you could go first. Chance to think about it. It seems like every time I read a sutta, or just for example, the sutta study today that I did, they just resonate with me. And I think about, how's this fit in my life? How am I living my life? I will say, like, for example, this morning in our morning puja, in our morning chanting, we went over the 10 reflections for monastics. And there's also the 5 subjects for frequent recollection. And I'm going to go with this. This is as I'm talking. Okay. They're very powerful, and they have been very powerful as a lay practitioner, but also as a monastic. The idea that I'm subject to death. I haven't moved beyond death. And so that issue starts, how am I living my life? How should I live my life? And one of our reflections as monastics is, how am I, and I think this is good for anyone, how am I spending my time? What am I doing? And I think I personally find that inspiring, because I ask myself, I could easily, I went to college, working. I could have easily, work, get a job, get a house. I've had those things. But then when you reflect, well, what does this really mean? How am I spending my life? And I'm going to die. Like, there's not even a question. Like, that's not even an issue of debate. How am I going to live my life? And so when I have always found that very inspiring, the Buddha's noble quest, noble search. What are we going to do with our lives? How do we want to live our lives? And for me, that meant being a monastic, becoming a monastic, and trying to live up to this road, this monastic life. It's a wonderful opportunity. Yeah, I could keep on talking.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones, I can't remember the Pali right now. I was trying to go up, but I'll butcher it, but I'll just say it in English then. It goes, through innumerable lives have I traveled through this vortex. Painful it is to come again and again and be born. Looking for the house builder, but never did I find one. I see you now, right? Your rafters or whatever have been taken out, and there'll be no coming again. So that's one of my favorite ones. I don't know. It's just like very poetic. It's deep. Yeah, it makes me all like, I don't know. It transports me. It touches me in a very kind of like visceral way. Especially in the Pali. Aneti jati pati samsara samadhi sam. I forget how it goes, but like in Pali, it's amazing. And that's like one of the suttas that I constantly recollect over and over and over and over and over again. Like, man, how many times do we keep doing this?
Yes.
Over and over and over. And even if you're not a big fan of like re-existence or rebirth, whatever you want to call it, like in this life, we keep doing the same things over and over and over again, and it keeps giving us the same painful result, and we don't stop. And we're looking to blame God or society or someone else. We're always looking for who caused this problem, who's causing this dukkha. And then lo and behold, it's you, or yeah, that's always been a powerful one. But for me, it's more kind of like, I don't know, I kind of get the feeling of like when I think about my grandma or my mom, and it just like, it gives me this kind of nostalgic or melancholic feeling or something like that to that sutta too. And it's one of my teachers who passed away, Bhante Puniji, one of his favorite suttas too. So it kind of connects into him too.
That's
so
wonderful.
It's a very tender sutta for me, I guess. That's why I like it so much.
That's very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. It's wonderful. So, yeah.
Those are a few. Thank you, Richard. Sue. Hello. Luisa. Let's see. Here we go. Venerables, I get very annoyed by people who push in line. I want to say something, but I fear I will say something unskillful. What should I do as a Buddhist? Kanti paramanta po titika, right? Patience and tolerance is the highest austerity or the hardest training, right? So it's difficult, to ask a person in the face of injustice to practice patience, right? Because it's an injustice for someone to skip the line or push in line or do something like that.
Cut the line.
It may not be a huge, world calamity, tragedy, but it is an injustice. It's not being considerate of others, Right. It's cheating.
It is.
And all these other things. So, but we have to see, what is beneficial for us. And is, giving into anger, giving into fear or resentment or hate or cruelty or even violence, is that beneficial for us? No, it isn't. Not at all, ever, right? And then also in a very kind of pragmatic way we have to be considered the consequences. We don't know who this person is. And nowadays you see all kinds of crazy stuff going on, especially if you're like me and you live in the inner city. It gets a little wild, So you take your own physical safety into consideration. And what's the saying? Choose your battles, right? You have to choose your battles too. So, but more on a more contemplative level, just really, really look into where is this coming from, right? Yeah. Where is this? Is this coming from a place of metta, goodwill towards even the person who's doing it, to try to protect them from doing unskillful things, which will lead them to suffering in the future? Right. Or is it coming from a place of I want to control things and I want things to be a certain way and they're not the way that I want them. Right. So I'm going to let this person know, right. So you kind of really have to watch your intentions there. And I would say if it comes from a place of metta and compassion, even for the person doing it, if you have no hatred in your mind or ill will or any bad intentions towards them, and you feel that you're in a safe place and it's safe enough to do it, then maybe you can say it. But if it's coming from a place of anger, anger only begets anger, right? The Buddha said in the Dhammapada. So right, just kind of keep those things in mind.
Yeah, and also, is it beneficial? Some people, you can say whatever you want, and people won't listen. Also, maybe someone's cutting in line because they have to get back to the hospital. Maybe a loved one is sick in the hospital, and they have to get back to the hospital really quick. Or I know myself, and have accidentally cut in line. Maybe they're not aware. So maybe you could say, "Oh, the line starts back there." Oh, I didn't know. As Venerable said, you have to kind of use. There's a lot of things, factors involved. It's a good question. It's one of those everyday things that happen on.
Hello to Manal. Oh, this is a funny one.
Also, what kind of dark chocolate are you allowed to eat? Dark chocolate, what?
What's the percentage? What do we usually go with? More than 70 or 80 or something like that? Dark chocolate? I don't know.
I think the lowest I've seen is 70.
Yeah.
68. We can eat chocolate all the time. We can only eat dark chocolate in the evening.
Yeah.
Thank you. The world of allowables is.
right, here's another one.
Sheridan, hello. I hope you're well. Sheridan is a practitioner who's been here quite a lot, so we hope you're doing well, Sheridan.
Good evening, Venerable. I have been lacking sukha and piti in my life, and it's really energizes my practice. Can sukha and piti be developed like a bhavana practice, not just awareness? So it is awareness that leads to piti, pasadi, which is like tranquility, and sukha. So the practice of satipatthana, anapanasati, you can get that. So it's not something different from it. You know, piti, sukha, pasadi, they're part of it. You know, they cannot be separated. They're conjoined. Also, if you practice the Brahma Viharas, it's also there's all the sukha there also, and the highest level is something called the beautiful. I've never liked that translation, but when you get to the fourth jhana, there's like the beautiful, but that's also a very pleasurable thing. But you know, also in giving and practicing dana, there's a lot of joy there. You know, there's a lot of satisfaction too, contentment. You know, and all these wholesome things. So maybe, you know, or like for me, I get a lot of happiness from sada, devotion. You know, conviction in the Buddha. I'll think about the Buddha, I'll imagine the Buddha, or sometimes I think about my teacher or my other, like the abbot at the temple, and I'll imagine him, and it makes me happy, you know, like to think about them, because they've done so much for me, and all that appreciation and gratitude also brings joy. So, I mean, there's so many ways that we can develop. Any wholesome state is directly connected to joy and to happiness. So just cultivate any kind of wholesome state in whichever way you can, and the end result will always be joy. Piti, pasadi, sukha, samadhi, like all the good things will come when you develop wholesome states in the mind.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Reflect on your goodness, reflect on the Buddha. The Buddha, reflecting on the Buddha brings me a lot of joy. Reflecting on the Dhamma brings me a lot of joy. Reflecting on the Sangha. As he said, reflect on your own goodness. You're a good person, Sheridan. And so reflect on your own generosity. Reflect on your own kindness. It brings a lot of joy, sukha.
So then here Jojo just clarifying. Sorry, it didn't post my whole question. I'll repost now. Okay. Let's see what else. Tara, hello Tara. Let it go, let it be. Let's see. What is this? Just a comment. I had to quit a job where they wanted me to be to falsify records. Oh, okay. I just couldn't do it, and turned it into my desire to go back to school, and has so much good come to me as a result. So maybe, you know, Jojo, this is something you can consider and think about it. You know, here's someone kind of in a similar situation as you. Hello to Shangi. And then Jojo just kind of talking about, I think kind of already addressed that whole topic. Nepali Asaji Himi Bante? Do you have a picture of a monk? If you are monastic, Vandana Bante?
You have good eyes.
Jojo. Well, you know, I would just invite you to, you know, consider everything that we said, and sit with it for a while, and see what's right for you. You know, you're the expert in your life. You know what's going on in your life, and at the end of the day, you know, whatever actions you do, no matter who tells you to do it, you're responsible for your actions. So even if we tell you to do something and you do what we say, you'll still be responsible. So I think the best thing to do is just to practice some self-compassion and some self-tolerance and some patience, and just kind of sit with it for a while, and see what comes up. Sometimes, you know, you're just sitting there and an answer will come to your head out of nowhere, or you're in the shower or something like that, or you're cleaning, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that,
Just say, if it doesn't feel right, listen to that. If you're uncomfortable with that, and it's okay. As Bhante was saying, take some time to reflect it. I mean, I would hope that those asking you to do that, if you said, I really have to think about this. I'm not comfortable doing this. I need to think about it. And then reflect upon it. As you said, and see where it comes.
Okay, I think we got some interesting question here. What's going on? There we go. You can read this one.
I'm surprised this question hasn't come up more. I am curious. I also have tattoos, 2 full sleeves. How do lay people and fellow monastics respond to your ink? Was it ever a distraction? How do you view your tattoos now as monastic first lay life? You want me to get that? I will say, even in lay life, honestly, I never really thought about them. I mean, because I've had tattoos since I was very young, so they've always been a part of my life. So, honestly, I don't think that much about them. And I think as anything, I will say a lot of lay supporters, I don't think about it, and I honestly, I don't. My robes are more important, and honoring the robes is more important. And when supporters come, do I conduct myself properly? That's not what, I have tattoos. I mean, it's kind of, so I don't know if that answers the question. Honestly, I don't think that much about it. What I will say is kind of interesting. Professionally, I always had it. I always wear long sleeves, but I never showed them, and so now they're always visible. Yeah. Most people that I worked with didn't even know I had tattoos. Yeah, well, and now everybody does. Everybody watching YouTube now.
When I was in the Air Force, there's a rule about your sleeves. How far how far I can go and how much a certain percentage of your arm or neck can show. So I always had it within regulations where most people never knew I had a tattoo. They'd have to see me at the beach or something to know that I had a tattoo. Right. So it was never really an issue. And in the military, tattoos are just whatever, no one cares. It's just part of the culture. And then growing up, also I grew up in a gang environment, so tattoos were also very normal there too. So my whole life, tattoos were just normal. It's not even a big deal, Right. No one cares if you tell them, look, I got this tattoo. They're like, whatever, who cares, Right. If anything, they'll tell you how it's lacking in detail, or how good it's not good. It's not that good of a tattoo, right? You should have gone to this person and got a better tattoo. If anything, that's what they'll criticize your tattoo in that way. They'll critique it. But as a monk, I mean, I've had some funny occasions. These are just very unique things. One monk told me, an Asian monk told me, if it was tantra, if it was magical, if I got these things and it came with a spell or something. And I was like, oh no, so then I explained to him, because in some parts of Asia, tattoos are associated with esoteric practices. Yes. And so once I explained it to him, he's like, so you just got it for fashion? I was like, yeah, pretty much. He's like, oh, why would you do that? So that was kind of interesting, that there was kind of a taboo of getting tattoos because they're a bit esoteric, but at the same time, it was the esotericness that would make it worth it getting one. If you didn't have an esoteric value to it, then it was a waste of time. Why would you do it? So that was kind of a funny account that I got from that monk.
Yeah, and I would say it's not uncommon for Thai monks to have tattoos. So it's not unheard of.
Hello to Liam. Hello to Usha. Richard, 25 years now. Tattoos. And Rick, just saying that have lived on 2 meals a day for years. Excellent. Intermittent fasting. Richard thanks Venerables. Okay, here's a question.
In practicing mindfulness of feelings, I know to relax aversion and greed, but what is the attitude to have towards neutral feelings?
Yeah. So the neutral feeling, I forget which sutta the Buddha says that it's associated with moha, with me, myself, and I, with the self. So the neutral feeling is an illusion. It makes you feel that there's a self there. So what you need to do is you need to investigate the neutral feeling in order to be able to see that there isn't a permanent entity there that lasts, from one experience or one moment to the next. So there is a danger in the neutral feeling. The neutral feeling is not a benign feeling worth of zero value. I mean, that neutral feeling represents moha. It represents illusion, delusion. So I would invite you to investigate it. That's what we should do. We should investigate that neutral feeling and deconstruct it and see its ephemeral nature and how there's nothing at the core of it. That this neutral feeling is just like all the other feelings. Anicca, dukkha, anatta.
Yeah, I think it's good. Just investigate it. It's also interesting sometimes just to notice, have the awareness of what's giving rise to neutral feelings.
And we say neutral, but it's like adukkha masukha, which is like neither pleasant nor unpleasant,
Right.
So I think it might be beneficial to kind of think about it that way too,
Yeah, neutral, like that's one of the things I've been kind of reflecting on. Is neutral like really the right? Is it really neutral?
Because sometimes neutral sounds like good, right? Like, I'm neutral. Like it sounds like like a good thing.
Right.
But in Buddhism, it isn't. The neutral feeling is not a good thing because it's associated with delusion. So I think better like neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Dukkha masukha.
And that's really, that's really the way it's in the systems.
And think about it's all these three feelings that lead to tanha, right? So any of these three affective tones or hedonic tones, vedanas, are the ones that are the condition that leads to tanha.
Right.
So you always have to have that in mind too. Like if you give in to any one of these feelings, then you're falling into tanha, into craving.
Yeah. And we may even crave neutral feeling. Like I don't want to feel anything. So we have that aversion and then we swing. I just, as you said, I just want to be neutral about this. I could see that where people get confused also with neutral with upekkha. Thank you, Ben. This is a good question. And no matter what, Chad, keep practicing.
Yeah.
Keep practicing. That's a good, if it's really developing your wholesome mind states, keep practicing with it and keep going with it.
Leon just making a comment. I think you have practiced to let it go, let it be. I think you have practiced Noble Eightfold Path by making that kind of decision. Luisa says, thank you. This thing jumps a bit. Jake D, hello. Okay, here's a question. Tomorrow I will be sitting in my first retreat.
Good for you. I would. That's one. What an opportunity! Yeah. Like your first retreat, right?
Yeah.
The beginner's mind.
And it says, although albeit remotely, right? So it's going to be remote, and I'm nervous that I might not be able to tolerate sitting for extended periods. Do you have any advice to help with this feeling? Use a chair. Lay down. Simple. You don't have to sit like this. There was no cushions during the time of the Buddha. And I never saw the Buddha saying you have to sit for 30 minutes. I never found the sutta where the Buddha puts a time limit or a minimum requirement, But also, like, the retreats have their guidelines and practices, and they usually have, the teachers are very open. So if you have any difficulties, just don't be hesitant, it's not the first time the teacher's going to hear about someone going through a lot of pain while they're sitting, and they may have some good techniques to share with you, or they might tell you what I said, hey, just grab a chair, sit in a chair or lay down.
Point. That's a good point. Yeah. Don't hesitate to ask the teacher. Follow the guideline. Like the guidelines of the retreat are there for a place. I mean, for a reason. And it's to help with your practice. And I would encourage you to, be willing to kind of push yourself to that point, or go to that point. If we always kind of like, oh, I've gone, it's good to sometimes, see and push ourselves a little bit further, Yeah, and ask who's ever leading the retreat, as you said, express those things to them. This is not the first time they've heard that. And most importantly, enjoy your retreat.
Yeah.
That's my advice to you. Enjoy and take advantage of that time to sit and really reflect upon that time. And,
what's amazing about like retreats, especially your first one, is like how you can get so intimate with people without knowing them. Yeah. Like there's this deep level of intimacy and fraternity, right? Like, but you don't even know the person's name. Like, and you've been studying with them, like for 10 or 12 hours.
The silent retreat, that person over there.
I felt like a den father.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something very beautiful, and tender about being in that situation, and to experience a level of intimacy without words or without touch or things like that. So yeah. Look forward to that.
Enjoy it.
Let's see. Jojo saying thank you. Okay, here's a question. Atihi atano nato Dhammapada. Truly oneself is one's protector. Yes. How do we connect the dot between the concept of self-reliance and not self? This just seems like it's a language, misunderstanding here. Right? So like we talk about a car, although we know that the car doesn't have a self, right? But it's very useful to talk about a car. No one's arguing for a permanent car or soul of a car, or, maybe animistic people might argue for that, or panpsychists.
People name their cars. They feel like their cars have a personality.
Yeah. But, no self doesn't mean there isn't anything happening, that there's nothing there. So, when we talk about the self, we're talking about all these causes and conditions, that are happening. We're talking about the 5 khandas, the pancha khanda. And when we talk about self-reliance, we're just really talking about having this kind of independent kind of practice that doesn't rely on external authorities, and that doesn't rely on rites and rituals. It's kind of a way just to cultivate wholesome states. So this self-reliance is just a way to have autonomously develop wholesome states. You don't need a self to develop wholesome states. A wholesome state is empty, or a phenomena that is empty of any self, and just developing those things. So we can take it into like a very kind of like reductionistic perspective and just call it what we're calling self-reliance. Is just this kind of autonomous cultivating of wholesome states.
Right. And it's our form. This form, develops those wholesome states and goes towards liberation. And I want to encourage you to explore those concepts in your own meditation. What does this mean to be my refuge? What does it mean to find refuge within this form? How do I use this? How do I use this light towards creating those wholesome states?
I was just reminded, like the kind of word games they play in like Mahayana Sutras, like the Buddha says that he's a Buddha because he knows that there's no Buddha, therefore he can say that there's a Buddha, like kind of stuff like that. But it kind of helps you if you get it, like, oh yeah, like we talk about Buddhas, but there is no Buddha.
Right.
And then that's why we're able to talk about Buddhas as just an idea or a concept or a label, or just to hold that place in language. We're using noun. These things are just nouns and pronouns. They have no basis in reality. These are just language games. So don't get caught up in grammar and language.
Right.
Reality is not held to the rules of grammar and language.
Yes. Go beyond this. Go beyond that conventional term of, well, this idea of self. Go beyond that and think of beyond that.
Chittapala, hello? Let it go, let it be. I just had a hyperactive conscious. I am grateful for the Eightfold Path at this time, though. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's very nice. Charsley, hello, hello. Oh, about tattoos, Richard's talking. I don't think I'll put this here. That's quite interesting. In 2 countries that I lived in, St. Lucia, London, I received quite harsh criticism from both in public, family, and friends, and quite enough occasions. Yeah, I mean, if you go to Japan, they won't even let you into some places.
Yeah, you
with
actually are
tattoos.
firmly. Yes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
my understanding.
I love this quote. I forget his name, but he says, culture is just peer pressure from dead people. So that's the way I think about these kind of things, in culture where they like, oh, that's taboo. You shouldn't have tattoos. I'm like, man, the people who made this stuff up are dead already. Like, why are we listening to those people? Anyways, here we go. Hello, Chad. Oh, this is interesting. A follow-up question.
About the neutral phase?
Yeah.
So feeling neutral isn't good. Is feeling content the best?
I think here we're using feeling 2 different ways. Because when we're talking about feeling neutral, we're talking about Vedana.
Right, sensation.
Yeah, Asukha Maduka. Feeling content is not a Vedana. Right. Feeling content would fall like under like a Sankara or something like that, like an emotional state together, like a feeling with a thought together, right? Like, this is satisfying. I'm good here. So it's different, in English, feeling maybe is a little sloppy. We use feeling for both a sensation and an emotion.
Right. It gets confusing. I think in that regard,
yeah.
It does get confusing.
So contentment is something different,
Right.
Contentment, I think, would fall under sukha, like pleasurable, but it is a blameless one. Right. Kind of like jhana and other wholesome states that the Buddha says, since they're not sensual, they don't depend on the senses, that these pleasures are blameless. So that's how I would see contentment, as sukha and good, and should be developed, that kind of sukha.
You cultivating the conditions that lead to contentment. And I think, reflecting on what does the mind feel with contentment is, you're saying, yes, I think it gets confusing, and that's always been when people feeling is a pleasant, neutral, or unpleasant is really that sensation. Mm-hmm. And it does get confusing.
It's just like that initial gut feeling that you get from something, like go towards it or move against it, or like looking at a white wall where you're just like, That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about emotions when we say feelings, and contentment would be some sort of more developed, affective state. Okay, here's another good one.
Would you give some examples of unworldly, non-carnal, painful feeling? Painful sensation?
I'm trying to think of some, because he goes, there's worldly pleasure, and there's painful pain that is worldly, and neutral that is worldly, and then there's unworldly pleasure, unworldly pain, and unworldly neutral feeling. And usually when they're talking about that, it's talking about like meditation, like in the meditative process, where this kind of unworldly pleasure, unworldly pain would arise. Yeah, that's never been very clear to me. I'm trying to remember something that Bhante Viola Ramsey said, but it's not coming back, because he had a one chat where he explained what this worldly, unworldly, but it's not coming back to mind right now. It's not coming to mind.
Yeah, I don't think I could answer that question accurately. The way that
send us an email. We can get back to you. Yeah. I love that. Like when I was in the Air Force and they would do these exams every 4 years to make sure that our organization is like following all the things. And our supervisor would always tell us, if they come and you don't know, you don't say you don't know. You say, I'll get that information for you as soon as possible. And they would always pass you. The only reason you wouldn't pass is if you say something incorrect or you say, I don't know. But if you know, because they want to see your ability to solve problems. You don't have to have the whole book memorized, you know? So I try to always apply that. I kept that with me. So if I don't know, I'll look into it for you and I'll find the answer, you know?
So
I don't put that pressure on myself to memorize the whole entire Tripitaka.
So with that in mind, please, you can send an email to info@buddhist.
Yeah, I'll answer it.
We'll forward it.
Yeah.
No, it's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, especially if, send an email. You can look at it more.
I haven't
Thank you.
looked into that in quite some time.
Yeah, now I'm inspired to. That's what's good about the questions, too. Inspired.
Richard says, this morning I was listening to the audiobook version of the Vimana Vatu, where one of the women was reborn in the realm of the 33 heavenly mansion. Well, that's nice. That's one good thing about nowadays, right? You don't have to like read the suttas. You can listen to them as an audiobook on Audible. So that's a nice thing to do. Oh, here's a question. What do you think about the Buddha showing off his psychic powers in the suttas? Or the psychic powers in the suttas?
I mean, I don't know what you mean by what do I think? I mean, the Buddha had an enlightened mind. And are you asking, do I believe in them? Or are you asking, like, do I think it's like, I don't know what the question, like, what do I think? I think the Buddha was a fully enlightened being.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm always amazed. Earlier, the question is like, what part of the suttas are you inspired? The whole, and we talked about the joy of reflecting on the Buddha. Reflecting on the Buddha, his teaching is always inspiring to me. It brings me a lot of joy because here's the possibility of an enlightened mind. And so, I just find such beauty in the words of the Buddha. And I'm always just amazed by the Buddha's compassion and ability. And I think we were talking about this the other day. The Buddha didn't go around performing like magic tricks or like, I don't know, look what I can do. No. The Buddha used his abilities, I think a lot of times, really out of compassion. Or I want to reach this person. Here's a person that needs instruction. This is a person that right now I'm going to go to instruct. So I think in those ways, I think in that really looking at the beauty and the compassion in those things.
Yeah, it's very cultural dependent. I think for the vast majority of human history, if a human would have read that, they would have been like, yeah, no big deal.
Right.
It's only like now in the last couple, like 200 years where people are like, oh, I don't know, but so that's just to say, like a lot of these things are depend on our cultural context, and sometimes we have to analyze our own cultural bias. It doesn't mean you automatically give in and you believe, but you need to kind of suspend your judgment for a while and kind of like look at your own kind of perspective and to see what it's based on too. Sometimes I think that helps. Although you might come to the same conclusion at the end, it helps to do that kind of self-exploration, because it might be also affecting how you see the suttas in different ways too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's very like misogynistic of the Buddha or things like that, but a lot of these things depend on the culture, and sometimes it's helped me a lot to kind of being able to step out of like what I take for granted as a modern person from the West, and kind of put that to the side and be like, okay, let me be open to other ways of experiencing the world and other cultures.
Yeah, and I also think it's important to look at all the suttas. It's easy to be. I read the sutta where the Buddha used these psychic powers, or the Buddha traveled to a heavenly realm, or the Buddha said this. People sometimes, I think, they pick and choose out of their cultural conditioning, where they're at right now. They say, "Well, the Buddha's saying this," or "The Buddha did this." And we have to look at that overall picture, as you say. It's only recently that people are like, "Well, wait a second." I don't know. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like I don't like that. That's what the Buddha did.
I love the saying, "Reality is stranger than fiction." So you never know. Okay.
I think that's Richard repeat.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a follow-up to that thing about the woman being born in the realm of the 33 gods as a result of her good karma. I haven't had much experience with Buddhist cosmology yet, so I was wondering if you could please provide more insight about this realm.
The realm of...
That's Sokka's realm, right? I think. Yeah, I'm not an expert in Buddhist cosmology, but I believe that's Sokka's realm, the 33 gods. And it's like, it's not even that high of a heaven. It's like a pretty low tier heaven. There's where like you find Zeus and all these kind of like Greek mythological kind of stuff. Yeah, it's actually, when you look at the like levels of all the heavens, it's like pretty much in the beginning somewhere. It's not that high, but it's still nice. I mean, it's still better than here. There's no kind of like the body falling apart and all these things that we don't like. I mean, they're born beautiful, and until the moment that they die, they stay beautiful. But they're always fighting with the Titans, so there's still war there. You hear the stories about the Devas having wars with the Titans and going back and forth, and they're usually jealous of each other too. So like, it's not a perfect place.
It's impermanent.
Yeah,
it's not a permanent place. So I think that's one of the things to remember. And I think it's Ajahn Dhamma who's done. I would recommend following up on some of his talks on Buddhist cosmology. He's done a lot of work in that area.
Yeah. I remember watching one of his videos on YouTube
really?
a couple of years ago, and he went through every single major realm. How much time do we have left? I think we're at time now. Or do you go a little bit over?
Till 9 o'clock.
Oh, till 9? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're good. Okay, let's see. Okay, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Oh, here's an interesting one. Very pragmatic.
Are swearing and cursing a violation of the fourth precept? Is that what is meant by harsh speech? You can have harsh speech without cussing.
Mm-hmm.
You can be harsh, like
in the South. Bless their heart. Bless your heart. I mean, that's an insult. It's not. But it sounds so sweet.
Right. So, and I would say no, depending on how you use cussing and curse words. And also, how does cussing affect your mind? Do you cuss? I mean, I've heard curse words. I've used curse words. I think as a monastic once or twice, but I don't think it's a violation. What's more important is, as I said, are you speaking in a way that's harshly? And again, you can do that without curse words, and you can say a curse word, and not necessarily be using harsh speech.
It comes down to the chetana, the intention behind it, right? The volition behind it. If it comes from a place of anger, hatred, and violence, then any word, even if it's a nice word.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
I hope that helps. It's a good question. It's something to ponder. But I also don't take this as us condoning you going around cussing all the time. Because that's the other thing. Like, I will say, I was saying something. It wasn't a curse word, but the person near me was really taken aback by it, and they asked me not to say it anymore. And so that's the other thing. We can say, well, cussing is not a violation of harsh speech, but also think about there's some people that are really offended by cussing, and it can really have a disturbance for them. And so when we're practicing, and then I think it would be harsh speech, though, because we're hurting somebody. Somebody might be really offended by it. So with all language, be careful with it. How do we use language? How do we use our speech? And really reflect upon that.
All right. Do you think other beings like Jesus or Asclepius being able to heal is similar to the Buddha? Like they had cities too? Why not? Why not?
You think so?
I mean, if you look at Indian history, there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of, supposed people that could do all these kind of things. It's nothing new within Indian culture for these things. But it's a little bit more rare outside of India for, to kind of see these things. Like even right now, there's like so many people, I think over a handful of people in India, they claim to be like a avatar of God and go around doing kind of magic and stuff like that. So I think it's just in our culture that, we're kind of like separated from that world. We don't live in that kind of world. We don't have that world view. So if right now, there's a bunch of people in India that claim to do it, why not? Like last year or 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago, why not? Go find out for yourself. I think that's the best thing, and also you'll be free of doubt. The Buddha said if you live with someone for 6 months, right, then you'll see if they're awakened or not, and you'll see their conduct. So that's the best way if you're really interested.
Yeah.
No, here we go. You can read that one.
So Sam says, generally in the suttas, we learn to practice sila. Sila will develop samadhi and wisdom. Is the reverse also true? E.g., listening to more Dhamma talks and meditation to help develop sila. What's beautiful, I think, about the path, they all reinforce each other. And it's not step by step by step. As we develop sila, samadhi, panya develops. But the more wisdom we have, the stronger our sila is. Because we understand, if I break this person, this is a harm that will result from it. As we develop the Brahma Viharas, as we develop our heart and our wisdom surrounding the Brahma Viharas, why would I want to hurt somebody? Why would I want to break a precept? Why would I want to harm another person? Because I have the wisdom to understand how harmful that is, not only to that person, to myself. And so yeah, going to your question, not that it necessarily goes to reverse, but as you develop them, the others develop. And it goes back and forth. And I've also noticed in my practice sometimes, and I think especially when I reflect on the Noble Eightfold Path, reflecting is one area too loose or too tight. You know, the Buddha gives the example of, I forgot the instrument, or the strings were too tight. If they're too tight, the notes sound off. If they're too loose, the notes are sound off. So it's the same thing. Also reflect on your silas. Is it too loose? Are we holding it? And so reflect on those areas of the path, and they all come together. They all reinforce each other. They all support each other.
Yeah, that's it.
Practice them all. Practice silas to be.
Hello to Samino, Hoylin La Lo. Oh, this thing jumps.
Yes, that's jump.
Oh, here's an interesting one.
Can monks control their chi?
Well, there's no use of chi in the suttas.
Right.
It's not a Buddhist idea.
Right.
It's something separate. So maybe we can talk to a chi master. They'll
Right.
be more well informed.
Yes, like I can't answer. Yeah, I try and control my mind.
Oh, here's an interesting one. Go ahead.
During a red kasina meditation, piti and sukha were strong, and I entered a place of stable equanimity where all form, including myself, fell away. Continue. The mind was bright, stable, and all that was left was awareness. I felt a deep internal shift as if something significant has changed. Is this common in deeper states of samadhi?
Well, just look at what the factors of jhana, you know. Oh, let's even go before that. There has to be none of the pancha-nivaranas, right? The 5 hindrances should not be there. So if the absence of the 5 hindrances in and of itself lets you know that you're in a wholesome state of mind, in a state of samadhi, or depending how you understand it, maybe just right before samadhi, right before samadhi. So that's one thing. And then you can look at vitaka vichara. You can look at piti sukha, ekagata, and upeksha. And if those are present, and if you start removing, a few until you just have ekagata and upekkha, then that's also a good indication, right? And then if you go take that practice to another level, like the ayatanas are called usually arupa jhanas, and you notice that space appears to be infinite, consciousness appears to be infinite, perception of nothingness or neither perception or non-perception, then those are also indications that your samadhi is pretty well developed. So I think, we just kind of follow this map that the Buddha gave us of like what is not present, right? Unwholesome states of mind, and what is present.
Right.
And then that will let us know. And also, trust yourself. The Buddha said that this is to be verified by oneself. So to a certain degree, it requires a deep level of sincerity, to be very sincere with yourself, that you're not fooling yourself in these meditations. Yes. And see if there really is no unskillful state of mind, and just kind of, yeah. I guess that's all I have to say about that. I don't know if you want to say
No, I think that's, I would, I think that's good. Thank you.
Thanks for the recommendation, Richard said. Here we go. This is good for you because you're working on this right now.
What is the best way to memorize chants? Memorization is Mondays 11. My memorization skills are not what they used to be. It depends on the person. Some people memorize in different ways. And I think that's finding your way that works for you and then using that. For myself, it has helped just to hear it, and then having it repeated, like that helps a lot. So find what works best for you and then use that. I do think it's good just to listen to. I mean, one of the blessings of today is that you can go on YouTube and almost any chant is on there. And there's so many beautiful people. Well, the chanting, there's so many examples of people just beautiful chanting. And so I would just do that. And then also, I know by Giri, you can download their chanting book. I think Bhavana Society, you can download their chanting book. Or so I would recommend those and just follow along with, Google it on YouTube and follow the chanting. But also, find what works for you. I used to listen to chanting in the car. I'd be driving and I would listen to chanting in the car all the time. And actually, the one thing I found, all of a sudden, like we'll be doing a chant, and all of a sudden I'll be like, "Oh, I have this memorized. I know it," like without even trying. Sometimes practice too, repetition depends on how old you are.
Yeah, and if you have 5 hours a day free to practice chanting, that helps a lot too. Because that's how I memorized it. That my training was to chant about like 5 hours every day for like the first year. Obviously on the weekends we had a lot of pujas and ceremonies, so it wasn't. But like most of the time, like during the week we chanted a lot.
Yeah.
And you just do it. There's no special thing. You just do it. And I think being in the group, because you listen and you attune to other people, you try to resonate with them. That also helps with the chanting.
And just a little side note, there is a beauty. Sometimes I've seen those questions like, "Oh, are people like, how's chanting relate to meditation?" Chanting can impact your meditation in a lot of ways. And in a way, you have that meditative aspect of you're listening to other people. You have to be mindful. How's the leader chanting? What rate are they chanting? How's my body? I have to have body awareness. Like, am I sitting in a way? I can tell like when my chanting is off a little bit sometimes because I'm slouched. Am I sitting up straight to allow that? And then also the words of the Buddha. I've been chanting, and it's almost like as I'm chanting, my mind becomes settled. And all of a sudden that line, I can remember just more than once, like even a chant that I've done a lot of times, all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, just the beauty and the power of those words comes through in that chanting. I also find chanting very energizing. It's a lot of, we talked earlier about sukha. There's a lot of, for me, there's a lot of sukha in chanting and just being. We talked about community connection. There's a lot of connection with people. So you're sitting with your monastics, lay residents, everyone's chanting. We're chanting the words of the Buddha. And the other beautiful thing about the chanting, I think, is it's unbroken. I mean, for over 2,000 years, every day someone's chanting. Recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. I mean, that amazes me that that's happened. This is something that's unbroken. The Ratana Sutta, a beautiful sutta. That I'm sure that's been chanted every day, someplace in the world, for over 2,000 years. And the words are the same. It's not like, let's tweak it. Let's change it a little bit. Those exact words. You go back in time, 100 years, 500 years, someone was chanting that. Not only chanting that, but also that wish, that beauty of the heart, wishing for. We have the Buddhist words on loving kindness. wishing for that metta for the world. There's a power to that. And I think that beauty. And so, yeah, as we memorize, I think that helps with memorization. So, good luck with that. Stay right on.
Here's a funny question.
Who are your first or favorite Dhamma teachers except the Buddha? Why? Right. The world. Everyone is your teacher. Your Dhamma teacher. The world. I say that jokingly, but in a way it's true. Because if you open your mind, you open your heart, like everything can teach you. You find that teaching in everything, wherever you go. Oh. I have to say, I get a lot of joy, and the people here and the people that come and bring Dana, like this evening, someone came and brought Dana. They came earlier, and then they brought some Dana this evening. And I was just so touched by that. Like, that's so beautiful. And that's to me, like a beautiful teaching of the Dhamma, a beautiful teaching of what it means to follow the path, that kindness. So I think, yeah, there's teachers everywhere. If I had to also pick someone, if I had a John Chan, like, hello, John Chan. Okay.
We got to do like one of those internet things that pops up, top 10 Buddhist teachers, you know?
Top 10 list of Buddhist teachers. Be open to the world, because the world will teach you many things. The cat teaches. Kanti, patience.
Yeah. Don't
destroy something. Do you want to say your favorite top 10?
I mean, everyone's going to say that they're their own teachers, right? I mean, that's a natural thing, because you have that connection. They've cared for you. They've nurtured you. They've tended to you. You know, they've taken care of you in so many different ways and been so generous with you. So, of course, they're going to be your favorite, you know? Like, we don't choose our mothers. We love our mothers, you know? Like, you just have that natural affinity to them. And you're always going to say, oh, my mom's the best, you know? Like, when you're a little kid, my mom's better than yours, you know? Like, you get into these kind of talks. So, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, it's always going to be 100% subjective, you know? Like, my teacher is my favorite, you know? Like, that's the way it kind of works.
It's true. And I would say for you, again, we talked about the advantages of the internet. Find a teacher that really speaks to you.
Mm-hmm.
You may be listening to us right now and be like, oh my gosh, like, those are two horrible monastics.
Yeah, they're just messing around the whole time.
They're just messing around. Find a teacher that really speaks to you. And I think that's part of it as well. You know, the most important words, you say, except the Buddha, all our teachers are saying the words of the Buddha and teachings of the Buddha. They're not, oh, this is a John so-and-so's teaching. No, this is the Buddhist teaching. And this is how a John so-and-so is talking about the teaching. And so find a person that connects you with that as well. I think that's the most important.
I'd like to like rephrase it, right? Like, who are your most influential, like who have been the most influential teachers? Maybe put it that way, you know? Then I can say like my teacher, Bhante Puniji, Bhante Vimala Ramsey, Analayu Bhikkhu, Bhikkhu Bodhi, Bhante Sudaso here. Yes. I mean, that's why I'm here.
That's why I'm here. Bhante Sudaso and I have so much respect for both of them.
You know? So like if we say who have been the most influential ones, I think it's a better way, you know, to phrase it than like who's your favorite or something like that, you know?
Yeah. And it changes.
Yeah. Oh, here Jacob saying, he says, bless your heart is a great example. Laughing. I grew up in the South and it's absolutely used in less than kind ways. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm learning something new, because if someone said, bless your heart to me, I'd probably be like, oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, I learned that in the military. I was like,
Oh, really?
oh yeah, it's not a good thing. It's not always a good thing.
Backhanded compliment.
Oh, here's a good pick. Here's a good question that I like. We want to be like Venerable Ananda, right? Who has the ability to memorize Buddhist teachings. Talking about like being able to the chanting, I guess. Was that here the one with the chanting or the
Yeah,
other
I think
one?
did he have it? Yeah, I think he had that question.
Oh yeah, study and practice more Dhamma. You know, I've been looking into this thing about, I forget the name of it right now. I always forget the name. So there's this particular condition where people have great memory and they never forget anything. The problem is that you never forget anything. So all the bad things that happen to you, you never forget them. You know, so it's the life for these people is very difficult. They have that great memory. They can tell you like what was on TV like 3, 4, or 10 years ago when they were growing up. They know everything.
I've seen that. Like a condition where people know everything that's happened to them,
and they live a very difficult life. And then I thought
Seems
about
like
Venerable
that would-
Ananda. I was like, oh well, maybe he could have had something similar, where that's why he memorizes everything, and that's why you see him crying and like weeping many times, and it's like very difficult for him when all these things happen to the Buddha and stuff like that. So I'm just saying that, you know, to kind of make these things more accessible to people. Sometimes, you know, we over pedestalize or we kind of put these great arahants and great practitioners in a place where it just becomes like magic or like a fairy tale. And I don't think the sutras are supposed to be fairy tales, you know?
Yeah, they're not.
They're not just myths.
No.
And, you know, it's not like once upon a time, although it starts with Eva Mesutam, I heard at one time. It's not the same thing as a fairy tale, like once upon a time. Right. So I think by looking at things that we see now in the world can help us better understand how that could be possible, instead of saying, that's just a myth. You know, like no one can really do that.
Right.
So that's why I like to bring this example of these people who have very good memories of what happened to them in their lives. If you were listening to the Buddha and you had that condition, you would remember everything that the Buddha said. You would never forget it because that's the ability that they have. So I just like to kind of, you know, put that out there for people.
I think that's good. I mean, there's people now. I do think he also had every sutta memorized. So it's not uncommon. You see it, and I think it's going to this question from
the following one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's one Burmese monk right now that knows the entire Tipitaka, right? In Burma, there's always like one Burmese monk who would memorize everything. So
he might have that condition.
Yeah.
How can I increase my motivation to study and practice more Dhamma?
Sada, faith.
Sada, faith is important. Also, I think the recollection of death, remembering you're going to die, you know, and it could come tomorrow. And so, you know, earlier I talked about that reflection. How am I spending my time? So I think sometimes that can increase your motivation, but also I think you need to look at yourself, you know, in terms of, you know, I can tell you how I can be motivated, but what's motivating to you? I would recommend, I don't know, I'm saying I can't tell you, but now I'm going to tell you. I think it's very inspiring. Acts of generosity can be very inspiring to see the joy that it brings to other people. I find kindness very motivating. Like, can I be a kinder person? Can I give Dhamma? Just going to the temple and helping out, if that's available to you. If you can go to if there's a temple close by, like go there, you know? Or, you know what, if that's not available, go volunteer someplace. See the kindness, see the result. What can be very motivating is seeing the results of practicing the path and the fruit and the benefit that it gives. And Bhante said, faith, sada can be very powerful, but also just sometimes we just got to be like, maybe people don't respond the way we want. Or maybe our kindness doesn't result, oh, I want to be kind, but they didn't do this. No, we have faith in the Buddhist teaching. We have faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and that can inspire us and take us further sometimes, even when the conditions aren't what we necessarily want. People aren't responding the way we want. Things aren't the way we want, but we have faith in the Buddhist teachings. We have faith in the teachings, and that motivates us. That brings us further. We have faith in our kindness from what the Buddha said. And so that can inspire us and motivate us. But also look at yourself. Sit down and meditate for a few minutes. Wow, is my mind more peaceful? Use that as a motivation. I know the other day you were speaking about mental hygiene.
Yeah, to the kids.
Yeah. I'll let you, I think that's a good.
Oh, it's like since I've been teaching the kids in Dhamma school at our Vihara in North Hollywood for the last 8 years. And at the beginning, like after summer, I would tell them, do you brush your teeth every day? Yes. Do you shower every day? Yeah. Do you comb your hair? Do you wash your clothes every week? I go through all these things, right? But what happened if you didn't brush your teeth for a day? Oh, that's nasty. Like your mouth, you'd be stinky, and stuff like that. What if you wouldn't shower for a day? Oh, that's nasty. How about if you use the same socks the next day? Oh no, that's gross. I'm like, okay, so you see how important it is to clean the body, right? And take care of your possessions and your clothing. Okay, everyone here, raise your hand. When's the last time that you've cleaned your mind? And they all stay quiet. I'm like, what happens if you don't clean something? We just talked about it. How would your mind be? Someone always goes, dirty. Your mind gets dirty. I was like, yeah, if the mind gets dirty, So we also need to practice, I tell them, just the same way you practice physical hygiene, you need to practice mental or spiritual hygiene. That's also important. And I think, connecting it to like the movement there's been in our society to make mental health important, right?
Right.
Because we always prioritize physical health, but not mental health. And I think the next level that we're going to move into back again, which was known to everyone in the world just 100 years ago, was like spiritual health. And I think a lot of the physical and mental health issues have some spiritual component to it too, and it's showing that lack in our society. So I think my big encouragement is to talk about spiritual. In Buddhism we would call mental, hygiene, and to bring that back where you have some sort of practice that you do every day to take care of that mental / spiritual dimension of your life. It's so important.
It is important. And so reflect on that. Practice mental hygiene and reflect on how it cleans your mind. That can be motivating because you develop that desire to have a mind like that. And I know we're getting close on time. Is there?
No, and then the rest are just thank yous.
Well, it's wonderful.
In audience?
Can I ask a quick question? What do monastics do when they have to make a call to some organization and they get put on hold and there's hold music?
I mean, I usually just put it on speaker and just like do something else. And just, it's just playing. I'm like, I zone out. I'm like, whatever. It's like elevator music. It's not good anyways. So like, I don't fall into that trap.
This is similar. Someone asked a similar question last week, I think. And like, what do you do when you hear music? Like when you go out, like honestly, it's like anything, And so you practice sensory restraint. But on hold music, as Venerable said too, it's not designed to like, man, I really like this.
Yeah.
You do, yeah.
Start cleaning your desk or something, organizing your room.
Well,
you got like a whole hour at least, right? Usually takes like an hour if they don't hang up on you.
Yeah, I honestly can't even remember the last time that happened. Because typically we're not calling like customer service or something.
That's it. Everything's just thank yous. A lot of thank yous, and thank you all. Let it go. Let it be. Thank you, Jake, Manal, Richard, Karuna, Sergio. Who else was here? Rick. Sammy Stevenson. Oh, that's someone that I know. Hello. Who else is here? MPL Causa, Leon, T, Jake, and everyone out there, known or unknown. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Sometimes
for
we forget to
being
thank the Devas and Nagas that are here.
We thank all.
We appreciate you all.
We appreciate you all. And so tomorrow night, if you're local, Corona, who's local, we expect to see you. Tomorrow night, if you are local, you can come to the monastery. There's a Dhamma talk, 6 to 7:30, Dhamma talk meditation, question and answer. And then our Sunday program on 1 to 4. Venerable.
Yeah, I love Sunday service. I got it.
Our Sunday service will be here, and we hope everyone has a good weekend. Thank you all for tuning in, and the other venerables will be back next week. So
It's going to be like a monastic frat house here.
they'll be on. Yeah, who knows who will be on camera next week and presenting. So everyone have a good evening. Much happiness. We hope that very successful along the path. And many blessings to everyone.
Rejoice on your wholesome actions. Rejoice in all the good things you've done in this life.
And what you've done on a Friday night, you can be
Yeah.
out. Maybe they're going out after this. It's still early.
If you're going out, it's fine too.
Take care.
Okay.
Everyone,
Bye. Suki Hotu.
Sukyoto.